Well, welcome everyone to the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority Full Authority agenda. The date is September 21st, 2022 at 10 a.m. And welcome to board members and staff and anybody that's joining us. This meeting is also held electronically. The recording and draft minutes will be posted to KCCA's website on September 22nd, 2022. And the meeting will be streamed live at the Facebook page for Kettle Creek. So is there anybody on the screen that has any pecuniary interest that they would like to declare? And if you do, speak up, because I just got one picture on the screen. So hearing or seeing none, then I'm going to move on. Do we have anything for the hearing board? No. No. Okay. Now the minutes of August 18th, 2022, I have a recommendation that the minutes be approved. So again, just speak up because again, I just got Mary Ann on the screen and the program. So mover.
Harvey.
Chair, can we do a roll call?
Yeah, and I'll finish this. And seconder.
Herbert.
Herbert. Okay, and I'll approve. Anybody against that? None. And just be reminded by we have to do a roll call. So I'm going to ask Elizabeth to just go through to verify who is actually here.
Kravitz.
Here.
Jaguar.
Here.
Harvey.
Here.
Herbert.
Here.
Jones sent regrets. Mackey sent regrets. Peters.
Here.
Pelosa.
Here.
Warwick.
Here.
Winfield.
Here.
And there are 8 of 10 members present, Chair.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on now to matters arising. And the first thing that we have here is the media report. And Mary Ann, whenever you're ready, go ahead and start.
Good morning. So this month it's been a busy September for us. I just wanted to highlight this past weekend. The Kettle Creek Food Truck Festival was held in Dan Patterson. It was one of a few different festivals that kind of happened in the conservation area. It went from 11 to 7. It was the Kettle Creek Environmental Trust that hosted, and a busy and successful fundraiser all around. We had 7 food trucks throughout the day, and by the end of it, they were all running out of food. Great music, lots of activities, and generally a really fun, relaxed kind of event for those that joined us that day.
I just want to say before we move on that congratulations, Mary Ann, for organizing this. This was the first time, and we really didn't know what to expect, but it was a fantastic day, and I think well enjoyed by everybody in attendance. Thank you again. All right, so
Sorry, Chair, and in other matters arising, we did launch the Lake Whitaker new accessible dock on September 12th. There's been a lot of event planning in the tree planting program with another event planned for Saturday, September 24th at Lake Margaret. Any volunteers are welcome. You can contact Betsy if you're interested in participating in that tree planting event. And the planning for the Carolinian Forest Festival is underway. We're excited that it's going to be back to in person. So lots of volunteering, site logistics to figure out there. That will be coming up on October 3rd to 6th at Springwater Conservation Area. And I know they were oversubscribed within minutes of opening up. So everyone's looking forward to getting back into in person at that event. And if we can go to the next slide, Marian. We'll turn it over to Jen, Chair, for the watershed conditions report.
great, thank you. Go ahead, Jen, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just short and sweet. A lot of things been going on for fall sampling. A lot of things underway. One thing to highlight: we completed another year of drain classification sampling for that project. 2 new species were collected under that project: spotfin shiner and gizzard shad. These fish have been collected in the watershed in the past, but we haven't seen them in a while, so that's kind of nice to see. For the Lake Erie water levels, they're still higher than normal, but they're exhibiting their seasonal declines.
Interesting. Great, thank you. And now back to the CA Act Review Progress Report. Elizabeth?
So October 1st is the next deadline for our second quarterly report on progress that we are undertaking in terms of implementing the Conservation Authorities Act review. Highlights since the last report include that we've approved our fee policy and fee schedule. We've approved a new land acquisition and disposition policy that is now in compliance with the new regulations, and staff are continuing to work through just reviewing our any existing category 2 agreements and updating them if necessary. In terms of making further strides in what we need to do for the CA Act review, obviously the municipal election is stalling some progress, especially relates to developing those cost apportioning agreements. I think it's better to wait for the new boards and councils to be in place before we embark on that next step. So right now, staff are concentrating on preparing orientation material for any new board members coming on, as well as new councils. So the report was included in your advanced package, and in addition to approving the other matters arising reports, we're asking that the progress report be approved for circulation to the ministry as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding that?
I have a question back to the watershed report, conditions report.
Yep. Go ahead. Steve.
Thanks. I'm curious particularly about the fish survey. And if there's any way that I could get a copy of that, just for my own interest, having spent a lot of time fishing in Kettle Creek growing up, I'm curious to see what's not there that used to be there. And I'm curious, when you do these surveys, Marianne, do you look for things like, you know, one of the things I always remember in Kettle Creek, but I haven't seen for years, were mud puppies. There used to be some really good clam beds. There's clam beds down at Beaver Creek at Union too, but also crayfish. Do you look at mollusks and other things too besides fish?
So I can answer that. We do, so this particular survey that we've been doing for the last couple of years is specifically for drain classification. So there's two parts to that. We look at fish that are present in the water, in those water courses, as well as flow permanence, and a couple of other qualifiers for that. So that's what that project has looked at. But while we're doing those specific fish surveys, I'm also looking for those freshwater mussels, shells, and live animals that are in those areas, and track those kind of in a, you know, like an incidental sort of way. We haven't done any serious mussel surveys in the watershed. However, like the species list that we've had is definitely quite old. Those big surveys were done in like 1993. So any data that we've collected over the last 2 years is definitely good recent data. And we're trying to collect as much as we can in the watershed for presence, absence of species. But it's definitely a work in progress. But for mud puppies, I haven't seen them in the watershed yet. I wasn't actually aware that they were in the watershed, but I mean, the habitat is there in some places. It's just something that you'd have to specifically be looking for.
Okay, any other questions, Steve?
No.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I have a recommendation that matters arising A through D be received. So mover, Kravitz, seconder,
Peters?
Peters, and do you want to call the vote, Elizabeth, please?
Sure, Chair. The motion on the screen includes the passing of the approval of the.
Okay.
I put it into one, if that's acceptable to mover and seconder.
Is that okay, movers and seconders, that we have that full one? Sorry, it was different than what I had on my screen, but would think it's good. Okay, so that's good. So whenever you're ready, Elizabeth.
Sure. Kravitz.
Yes.
Jagger.
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
Herbert.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Pelosa.
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
thank you. All right, moving now on to correspondence. Okay, so do you want to talk about the emails, Elizabeth?
Sure,
Yeah.
just briefly, there's two pieces of correspondence. The first was an email from MECP just notifying us of an order in council, which actually changed things back from us being reporting to two ministries for the majority of our programs and services to reporting back to the Ministry of Natural Resources, except for source water protection. So if those of you, remember like 4 years ago, it's basically going back to that status quo period then. So just a minor piece of housekeeping there. The second piece of correspondence was actually notifying us of some upcoming webinars that relate to the CAF review. And Marian, if I can have the next slide. So there's 3 webinars that are coming up that the ministry is offering. Those are in that piece of correspondence that went out in the advanced package. If you're interested in attending any of those, there's an email that you can respond to, or you can just let me know and I will get you registered. There's phase 1 regulations, just a refresher, phase 2 and regulation policy overview as well. And then another phase 2 regulations webinar specifically focused on CA budget and municipal levy apportionment as it relates to the updated regulations. And that's coming up November 3rd. So if any of you are interested in any one of those webinars, either reply yourself to the email in correspondence or let me know.
Okay, any questions regarding that correspondence?
One quick question, Madam Chair. Just curious, do we know how long these webinars are? I couldn't find any information about that. Is it an hour or 2?
Chair to Dominique, I didn't see any mention of that in the email as well. I just registered for them the other day. I can reach out to them just to chat, to try to get a time frame. Normally they've been an hour and an hour and a half, so, but I'll double check for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Then I'm looking for a mover that this correspondence be received.
Herbert,
Loza,
Okay, Herbert and Pelosa, mover and seconder, and I'm gonna get Elizabeth to call the roll when she's ready.
Kravitz,
yes.
Jager,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes,
Pelosa,
yes,
Warwick,
Yes,
Winfield.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
okay, now moving on to, we don't have anything for statement of revenue and expenses, right?
That's correct.
And no new business, or this is the new business in front of us? Okay, here we go. So is this the membership?
Yes.
Okay, so the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority Board membership, and Elizabeth, this is your report?
Sure. Members remember back in March 2021, we had a report about our existing membership and how it's compared to the population formula provided in section 14 of the Conservation Authorities Act. And when compared that to the data that's provided by MPAC for a levy, London was slightly shy of the population that's required to have 3 members. And so we agreed, a formal letter went out to all member municipalities, and each member municipality agreed at the time to leave the membership as was and re-look at it prior to this municipal election. I've taken a look at the most recent data released by Stats Canada in terms of the census, and it continues to support our current membership moving forward. So the suggestion that I put out in the advanced package was basically, instead of using MPAC data, that we use the Stats Canada data, and that supports current membership that we have. And the proposal would be that staff continue to monitor the census and Stats Canada data prior to municipal elections and adjust the membership as required in accordance with the act at that time. Marianne, if I can just get the next slide, we've got a chart that was in the advanced package, so you can see the population formula that's included in the act that's based on the population in the watershed, and the thresholds that lead to the membership requirements. And what I've done in the chart below is just reconfirmed the population in the watershed from Stats Canada, and that confirms 3 members from the city of London. So if members are in agreement with that, that will be communicated out to the member municipalities as you consider your membership appointments for 2023 after the election.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, so we do have, sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
It's Dominique. I was just curious if we know the source of the discrepancy.
Do you mean why the numbers are different?
Yeah, so is it because of the different year, or do they count households or different?
Like, are you saying between the Stats Canada one and MPAC, or between the
Yes.
two? Yeah, well, MPAC hasn't updated since I think 2016. So I think they're trailing. That would be my understanding.
Yeah, I
Dennis?
thought it was because impact is based on the voters list, so it doesn't actually count true
Yeah.
population, where Stats Canada's true population. That's my understanding.
Okay, that makes sense to me, but I know that I don't think, like, with the way MPAC's been moving, I don't think they're current, so I think I would be tending to go with the census. Dominic,
So-
is that different than your understanding?
I would just want to make sure that, we choose the Stats Can, not because it doesn't cause change, but because
Okay.
I sound like it's the more reliable source of the two, like the more up to date at this point. That
I
would be
would-
our rationale.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Elizabeth can correct me if I'm wrong, but the same discussion came up in March at the City of London, and they were experiencing similar discrepancies with the impact data, and we're choosing at that time to lean more to the Stats Canada data that it better reflected what's actually happening on the landscape right now than lagging in terms of the impact data.
okay,
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's Elizabeth Pelosa. Just yes, MPAC is currently still rolling at 2016 numbers, and the south end of the city does have a larger immigration center for London, so a lot of them won't be on that on the voters list and everything. So
great. Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, just question for Jim Herbert.
Yeah,
So, thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed the member appointments. So St. Thomas has 2, which is Steve and I see London has 3, and Elizabeth represents London. When it came to a major vote, would she be able to vote, Elizabeth be able to vote, count as 3 votes? Or does it just count at 1?
No, there are 3 current members that are representing the City of London on the board. So that's Elizabeth Pelosa, Bill Mackey, and Ralph Winfield.
Oh, fine. Thank you very much then. I just need that clarification. Thank you.
okay, all right. Any other questions? Okay, we do have a recommendation that the most current population data from Statistics Canada be used to determine membership on the board of directors, and further that KCCA membership be evaluated before each municipal election, and member municipalities be advised of any necessary changes prior to board appointments. Mover,
Herbert,
thank you. Seconder. Peters and Elizabeth, when you're ready.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey, or sorry, Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
thank you. Now moving on to the meeting schedule. Elizabeth, when you're ready.
So just again, basically around the election, we have a scheduled meeting for October 19th. I just wanted to bring that to members' attention. I know it's probably in your calendars, but it can get very busy in an election year, especially in and around the vote. So I want to make sure that we can maintain quorum for October 19th. And it would be my proposal then that I could get the rest of the business on the October 19th and cancel the November 9th meeting, or only hold the November meeting if required on November 9th. and cancel the December 15th meeting and hold instead a member orientation session for the new members. And then the first meeting of the new board would be on January, our regular scheduled meeting for January, the third Wednesday of January 2023. So I'm opening up to members just to make sure that everyone, that we would have quorum for October 19th, and I would only call the November meeting on the November 9th if we had business that we couldn't finish at the October 19th meeting.
Okay, any comments from the board?
Will you, excuse me, Jim Herbert,
Yeah,
will you send that all out to us in an email? So it's not all kind of jumbled up, what's canceled, what isn't going to be?
Certainly.
yeah, that can be
Yep.
done. Any other?
That'd be good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Just speak up because I can't see you. So if there's a question, just say anything. If not, then I'm gonna ask that the updated 2022 meeting schedule and 2023 proposed meeting schedule be approved. Mover, Kravitz, seconded.
Here.
Thank you. And whenever you're ready, Elizabeth, go ahead and call the vote.
Herbie,
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey. Harvey,
yeah, sorry. Yes,
Herbert.
I lost my sound. That's not all bad, Stephen. Jim Herbert, yes, thank you. I say yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
and Warwick,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Thank you. Now we have C, Forest Management Update, Lake Whitaker Conservation Area. Who shall speak for the forest?
I'm just gonna check, Jeff, are you back online?
I just connected, yes.
Okay, there we go. Whenever you're ready, Jeff.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, the purpose of this report is just to provide an update to the board with respect to harvest operations conducted at Lake Whitaker Conservation Area.
fine, thank you.
Sorry?
It's okay. I don't think it was related to you.
Sorry. Yeah, as members will recall, there was damage to the woodlot out at Lake Whitaker following a tornado event. And it was identified that GWG Resource Services would be retained to go out and conduct a management inventory and put together a management plan for that woodlot out there, the deciduous forest area. They did mark well over 500 trees that needed to come out, and conducted a tendering process to obtain bids from logging contractors to log that bush. 9 bids were submitted, ranging from 34,000 to just over 81,000, with the highest bid being submitted by Townsend Lumber. The bid was awarded to Townsend Lumber, and they conducted harvest operations this past January. Weather conditions were very good at that time of year, and they completed the harvest operation in just shy of 4 weeks. And a follow-up summary and inventory completed by GWG Resource Services indicated that the works that were done really well and in the excellent category. So there does remain, the tops do remain out there, and there's some firewood out there. We'll be spending a little bit of time in the next couple months trying to figure out a way to get the firewood taken out of there, whether it's finding a logging contractor or a firewood operator, that type of thing. So recommendation is that this report be received, and that any surplus funds from the harvest operation be directed to a conservation lands management reserve.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Jeff?
Peters.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Jeff, so when the survey is done, before they go cut, if the survey identifies, say, a significant species of tree, or even something species at risk, or maybe a tree of an unusual size that is a 200-year-old oak, like, do we preserve those trees in the process of, because in my mind, what we do, it probably could benefit some of these significant trees, but curious how it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any species at risk that are identified there are general minimum requirements for staying away from them as far as distance for harvest operation. And things can be done at that point in time to actually facilitate expansion or improvement of health of that identified species. And likewise, they didn't identify any trees that had some sort of value from like a 200-year-old oak tree, that type of thing, that should be preserved. But if that was identified, it would be flagged and precautions would be taken to make sure that tree was preserved as well.
My second question, when a forest like this gets harvested, how much damage is done to things like the trilliums and stuff like that that's growing on the ground floor? Is there long-term damage as a result? That's the end of my questions, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank you. Good question. That's one of the advantages of using someone like GWG Resource Services, a lot of experience in that logging and marking. And they generally recommend that any harvest operations be done in the winter when soil conditions and snow conditions are such that it minimizes damage to ground vegetation. So, and as mentioned, this operation was conducted in January for that reason. Once ground conditions were suitable, that's when the logging operation was conducted.
okay. And it did look from the pictures, Jeff, that the ground really didn't take much of a beating. There wasn't any ruts or anything like that, it seemed to appear. So they did a great job of getting in and out of there with minimal damage.
Yeah, it's one of the cleanest operations I've seen, and I've seen quite a few in my position with the county. As far as damage caused by skidders or just felling damage and residual damage to standing or remaining trees, that type of thing. So it was a nice clean operation that way.
Great, thank you.
Jim Herbert,
Yep, go ahead.
thank you. Jeff, is there any plan to use that big open space now for anything, or you just you retree it and let it regrow?
Yeah, the marking was done selectively, so it only removed certain trees. There wasn't any clear cutting done. So one of the objectives of the selective harvest is to allow some of that smaller understory to take off and fill in those spaces. So there shouldn't be any, or I don't think there was any spaces identified in the report from GWG that suggested infill planting. So there's lots of regeneration there that will take off now that there's a little bit of opening in the canopy.
Thank you. It looks great.
I think the confusion may lie, Jeff, is just that picture is the driveway with all the stuff stacked in it. That's not the actual woods, but it's the access area. So that may look like a clear area, but it's really just the driveway.
Well, yes, you are right. That is correct. That is the landing area right at the end of Doan Drive.
Okay, all right. So we have the recommendation in front of us. Do we have a mover?
Just one more question, Madam Chair, if I may.
Oh,
I was just
sorry.
curious.
Dominique. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. At this point, do we have an estimate of the profit?
Yes. Yes. At this point in time, I'm estimating with expenses for GWG that it's just shy of 80,000. Depending on how things go with a firewood operator, there may be some more expenses required there to have that firewood taken out. I'm hoping that there won't be, but I'm not optimistic.
So just to be clear, the net, so after expenses, we're looking at a potential profit of 80,000.
It would be shy of that, but not significantly below that. Yeah, definitely, I would guess between 75 and 80,000, somewhere in that range.
Thank you.
Well, they say there's a silver lining to every cloud, so do that for tornadoes too. So again, we have this on the in front of us on the screen, so looking for a mover. Don't all speak at once.
Harvey,
Okay, thank you. Second.
Herbert,
Okay, thank you. And whenever you're ready, we can do the roll call.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Great, thank you. Now moving on to item D, the 2023 draft budget preparations and overview. Whenever you're ready, Elizabeth. Thank you.
So 2023 will bring us to the end of our 4-year budget process that we undertook starting in 2019. And so I thought I'd just take a brief moment this morning and walk members through really the successes that you helped staff be a part of. And just to start things off in 2022, over these last years, we've been working towards a more paperless environment. And the last thing that we did in 2022 was bring our accounting to a cloud-based accounting system and introduce the onboard platform as well for board members that they can access their board packages and also the policies that would help them govern the authority as well. We've also introduced Office 365 that will ensure that our software costs are built into operating budgets moving forward and not big one lump sum payments every 3 or 4 years. And of course, as we talked earlier today, we've been working through the Conservation Authorities Act. And we completed things like the inventory of programs and services, the fee policy and acquisition and disposition policies. And we've also undertaken a comprehensive salary and pay equity review in 2022 that we will be looking at implementing in future years as well. We've also made big strides, I think, in the flood forecasting and regulations department. So here we've looked at flood lookup tables for Port Stanley. This is a 30-year-old study that we've updated with new information that staff can better forecast flooding due to beach uprush, and that final study will be brought forward to you next month. But we've done other things like improve the floodplain mapping in Port Stanley and most recently Port Stanley Flood Elevation and Development Guide. So updated regulatory flood elevations and produced a guide that can better assist landowners in design requirements when we're considering development in Port Stanley. All of those were accomplished by focusing one-time cost savings. So doing things like backfilling maternity leaves and going out and finding funding. We were able to find 50% funding for the flood update that we did in Port Stanley. And all that has helped us take those strides without a big impact in municipal fee. We've also updated our website this past year. So we brought it on to AODA compliant website, and we completed that with internal resources as well. So it brought it into AODA compliance, and since May, over 23,000 visits to the KCCF website have been logged with 81,000 page views. And hands down, the pages that are most visited by people are Dalewood and Lake Whitaker campgrounds. They're the most searched queries on Google. A 65% accessing through a mobile device, 32% from a desktop, and 3% from a tablet. Marianne has also put together the social stats through social media. Is one of our main ways in reaching audiences and disseminating information right now. And you can see that our reach continues to climb year over year. So in 2022, we're up 59% in terms of our reach. 190,000 people reached with some posts. And our likes and followers are up as well, 85% from 2021. We're currently just over 3,000 followers in our Facebook page. Instagram continues to have the same type of reach with 1,200 followers and 85 new likes this year. So a great way to reach and connect with the public. And as I mentioned, hands down, our campgrounds are probably our most sought after information. And I think that's evident of just the great work that our field staff does in terms of making our campgrounds approachable for the public. And in my opinion, some of the best campgrounds in the area in terms of campsites, amenities. And that's been bolstered this year by a $71,700 grant from the Government of Ontario's Community Building Fund, which is administered by the Ontario Petroleum Foundation. And that allowed us to introduce 3 docks at Lake Whitaker, one being accessible, which is a great addition and has been well received by the public, as well as 2 other docks for the public to access that lake and fish as well. And of course, our biggest win this year was certainly the introduction of the Deer Ridge Conservation Area, which members had an opportunity to tour this month. And with that addition of property, our trail network is now 31 kilometers that we're managing and offering up to the public for access. In terms of our other programs and services, staff continue to work hard to look for funding opportunities to offset costs. The Dalewood Dam is going to be a big expense over the coming year as we look to manage that maintenance that we know we need to undertake on that dam. It's going to be a big impact to our capital budget that we're trying to manage with internal resources and not pass that cost of that maintenance off to the member municipalities. As well, as Jen mentioned earlier in the meeting, over the last 7 years, we've garnered $62,000 from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to undertake municipal drain classifications, and she was successful again this year in getting funds to support that. And we've always looked for additional funds to support the invasive species program, especially what we need to do in terms of controlling invasive species on our lands. So $15,000 from the Kettle Creek Environmental Trust is currently supporting those initiatives, and staff have also gone out and got $12,000 from the invasive species program in 2022. We're maintaining our tree planting goals of 50,930 trees by pursuing funding programs and securing willing landowners to take that on as well. So all of those successes we're trying to build on with the 2023 budget and continue to work through our strategic work plans in order to deliver on initiatives. And there's 5 key objectives that we're looking at for 2020-23. Which were explained in your advanced packages. Keeping in mind that my ultimate goal is always to keep the municipal levy down and balance the different pressures that we have in terms of fulfilling our objectives and our programs and services for the public. Overall, I would say that the 2023 budget plan that I have in place or I'm working on is very much a status quo budget, not introducing any new programs and services, simply trying to maintain what we have with as little impact as possible to the municipal levy. So the first objective that we have is to basically implement the results of the 2022 salary review and pay equity review of balancing inflationary pressures relative to wages, insurance, and other uncontrollable costs. As the advanced report said, the July CPI was 7.6%. I think it's still hovering in and around that percentage point. In a poll with other neighboring CAs, some CAs are going with that CPI on their salary grid. Some are coming under, but basically overall, the average is about 5% cost of living to some of the neighboring CAs on what they are considering presenting in their draft budgets. Municipalities are in around 2 to 2.5%, I would say, just on the outreach that I've done. So I'm sticking with the proposed draft, which applies a 2% cost of living to our updated grid and placement of staff within that grid. And something to keep in mind that was reported in last month's budget preparations is that OMERS is now voluntary or less than continuous full-time. That puts a real pressure on the campgrounds budgets, as well as increasing seasonal staff wages to better them, to get them on our new pay grid and become more competitive so that we can fill positions. It was very tough for the field staff this year to pull off a season without attracting the staff that we needed at the wage point that we had. Having said that, the 2% cost of living increase, well, that's what I'm presenting. I think there's still The prospect that we'll lose ground, especially if our nearest competitors are higher than 2% cost of living. We might lose ground before we can even get the new salary grid completely implemented. And I should say that that salary grid, in terms of placing staff in that grid and moving them up through that grid, right now is paced out at 4 to 5 years to have staff moving and getting back to the top of that grid. We hope that is that right now the trend is showing that the insurance market is softening a little bit from the highs that we saw in the last couple of years of 22% increases. I've applied a 9% increase to the 2022 rates in this budget. Next slide. The other objective is obviously our core. So there's lots of things that we need to be looking at in terms of focusing on our natural hazard program. The budget prioritizes updating flooding mapping to areas of development pressures with minimal impact to the municipal levy. So the two projects that I have planned for the 2023 budget, one is to get a better flood forecasting system, a more automated system and a hydrologic model, as well, again, focusing some additional floodplain mapping updates to areas of development pressures. And those two projects will be scaled to available resources, pulling from reserves and soliciting 50-50 funding proposals from different various levels of government. And that already have 2 funding proposals in the works to try to secure those funds for 2023. Next slide. We've also enhancing staff capacity to implement the requirements of the CA Act. As you recall, last month we updated you on that the ministry is deeming that the Ontario Low Water Response Program is mandatory. We discontinued or stopped running that program in 2019 after the funding was canceled by the province. To initiate a water response team, collect and analyze stream data, and inform stakeholders of the low water response program and the various levels. The budget plans for a minimum program of 5,000 costs, which are now included in the updated 5% levy projection, which I hadn't budgeted in talk last month at the 4%. The next slide. I want to continue to invest in technology to improve public access to the KCCA services. With annual investments in software and GIS portal are not factored into the operating costs moving forward. And we're looking where possible to improve web access to resources by doing fillable forms and more online resources as we can. Next slide. Again, the staff is looking for other ways to generate funds, and we're working through the process of looking at all of our user fees to maintain costs and support the delivery of the stewardship tree planting programs and active recreation in terms of camping, as well as comprehensive capital asset management plans. We'll have a full report to you in October. We're reviewing our fees in each department to ensure that we're doing cost recovery where possible, or in the cases of the campgrounds, that we're covering costs and generating revenue to be reinvested into programs and services and capital reserves. I can't stress enough how important the campground revenue is going to be to our ability to pull off the dam maintenance project that we need to undertake. We need to be pushing the revenue from the campgrounds back into the capital reserves to prepare for that 500,000, and could be $500,000 expense to the dam next year. We need to be pushing for revenue from this year and planning for revenue next year to be pushed back into those capital reserves so that we can not have to go out to remember municipalities to support a capital project. That's my goal. Next slide. So overall, what we're seeing over 2023 is a change of municipal levy, an increase of $52,357. That's what is a 5% general levy increase. The MNRF funding for our core mandated programs and services is predicted to be unchanged. And our user fees were upping by $137,000. That includes campground fees. We're looking at increases to our tree planting fees as well. And our grants and partnerships, it's down slightly right now, but that will be refined as we continue through the budgeting processes. A lot of those funds are directed to programs and services that have no municipal levy to them, so they're very project orientated. So as funding proposals go out or we refine where those funds are coming from, I expect that to be on par with last year and not see a decrease in that. And we continue to pull from our operating reserves. Right now, it's slightly less than last year, but still substantial at $141,069. And again, we'll have a better reflection of what reserves are being hit in further budget reports. So overall, the pressure points in the proposed, that should say expenses, not revenue. So that really threw me for a minute. So the second half of that chart should be expenses, 2023 proposed expenses. With salary increases of 110,000. And again, there's a big significant increase there, mainly in regards to campground and seasonal staff. There's a big hit there, as well as getting people into that updated salary grid and moving them forward. The maintenance and service supplies are slightly increased. You can see the insurance tax increase of almost $20,000 there. Professional services are staying basically around the same, and non-recurring project expenses would be unchanged. And again, those funds would be good pulling from reserves to look after some of those floodplain mapping projects that we are contemplating right now. The amortization is subject to change just as we get those amortization rates fixed with what the capital purchases are this year. So I expect a little bit of change there. But overall, that would be where the budget sits right now with a proposed 5% increase.
Okay. So any questions? That was quite a lot of information, and I expect that if you have questions, go ahead. And again, all I can see on the screen is Ralph. So if anybody has, okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Elizabeth, for the presentation. I look forward to all the potential revenue generator report coming back in October. I think that's going to be really important. But if you identify some, maybe not necessarily new revenue sources, but you have a comfort level of increasing fees, does that have the potential? And I heard that you talked about reinvesting it into if it's a seasonal staff member at Dalewood, the additional revenue would help pay for his or her increased wages. But is there a way to go further that we have the potential to bring the 5% general levy lower if you identify more, potentially some more revenue sources? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Steve. I think the majority of the revenue generation that we've already are already contemplating as a staff are already speculated or built into this budget that I'm presenting with you now. So with the report that I'm bringing in October that outlines all of those revenue generating the increases is already factored into this 5%.
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, it's Dominique.
Yeah, go ahead, Dominique.
Yeah, sort of following on in the same line, some of the grants, I think, so there's, it says it will be changed as funding proposals are refined or confirmed. So if those are successful, would those go toward lowering the general levy potentially?
No, I think I've mentioned in my presentation, the majority of those funds or the decrease that you see there really relate to the stewardship program, which is not supported by municipal levy. So it adjusts as we find As we find revenue to undertake those projects, that would come up or down and adjust, but those projects really relate to programs and services that are already being supported outside of municipal.
I was curious, if I may, Madam Chair, just one more question. I know last meeting, we did talk about a 4% was being contemplated, and I understand we passed a minimum of 4%, which of course allows for 5% being considered. But what would 4% look like? What's the difference in dollars in the overall budget?
It's about a $10,000 difference. So what I'm saying is we're bringing up that Ontario Low Water Response Program on, as well as I had refinements in terms of the insurance and the benefits plan that I got refined numbers for between now and then. So that's the discrepancy, is really, you know, between that's what's the differences.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Dominique. Any other questions? Oh, so it looks like the province, by putting that low water response, is putting the stress on the budget, as well as the insurance, which how anybody could control insurance these days. I mean, that's, you know, that's a municipal challenge as well. And it's a bit scary, isn't it, really? Because I don't see how you see the end. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a recommendation here that staff continue to develop a draft 2023 budget with a cost of living increase to the 2022 salary grid and a 5% general levy increase, and further that the costs associated with the implementation of the Ontario Low Water Response Program be included in the draft budget. And finally, that member municipalities be informed of the draft 2023 budget projections for their own budgeting purposes. Do I have a mover for this? Kravitz, seconded by?
Harvey.
Thank you. Elizabeth, whenever you're ready, please call the vote.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Thank you. So now moving on to item E, September Planning and Regulations Activity Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking for a motion to receive the report that was in the advance package.
Any questions regarding the report that Joe submitted?
Peters will move.
Thank you. Seconder?
Winfield.
Winfield, thank you. And Elizabeth, when you're ready.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
thank you. So we have, just to be sure, we have no closed session today.
No.
Okay, and we have an upcoming meeting, which would be October 19th, 2022 at 10 a.m. And I think that will conclude our meeting today, and I look for a mover to adjourn. Kravitz, seconded by,
Winfield.
thank you, Ralph. And I don't think we need to call that vote. I think everybody wants to adjourn. So thanks again for joining us, and have a
Have a
great
nice
rest of
day, all. Happy
Bye now.
campaigning for those campaigning.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.